Loud and clear. Very good. So, good afternoon, I can say now, everyone. I see people walking past, so if anybody wants to come and listen to what the European Commission and what the EU member states are doing to bring the European single market closer to citizens and businesses, do feel free to take a sit down. You've been walking around all week, so I guess you're tired. So anybody who's walking past who wants to come and join us, feel free. We're very friendly, and we're going to have a nice presentation. So thank you all for joining us, and those who are watching online as well. We're going to present to you now an EU regulation and a technical system stemming from this regulation that are working to make the European single market more innovative, to foster mobility, and to basically, as the title says, bring the single market closer to citizens and businesses. And for the first part, I'm going to hand over to my lovely colleague, Charlotte Wolfson, who's going to walk us through the Single Digital Gateway and the Single Digital Gateway regulation. So Charlotte, please.
Thank you, Thomas, and good morning, everyone. Very nice to see you here. So, the Single Digital Gateway, what is it and how does it help bringing the single market closer to citizens and businesses? It is a one-stop shop for citizens and businesses who want to live or do business in another EU member state. The SDG, as we call it, enables all users to find information about EU and national rules, procedures for complying with these rules, and EU and national assistance services that will help with problem solving. It is accessible via the Your Europe portal, so this is always the starting point. It has been gradually implemented since 2018 with the involvement of all levels of government, from national to local authorities, as well as the European Commission. It has three main pillars. The first one is information. Via the Your Europe portal, users can search and obtain information regarding the rules and the rights of the EU as well as member states. The information that must be provided by the Commission and Member State is listed in Annex 1. And it must comply with a level of quality, high quality, it must comply with high quality standards. So that basically means that information must be complete, it must be up to date, it must be well structured, and it must be user friendly. So what does it mean for citizens and companies in practice? This is where you can find, imagine you wish to study, work, or retire in another member state. You can find all information that you need on this portal. The information will be complete and up to date and will be accessible in English. Or imagine as a business you want to understand, how can I fund my business? What do I need to do to apply for public contracts? What are the health and safety requirements that apply to my business? This will be the one-stop shop that you would need to consult. The second pillar of the SDG concerns procedures. There are several aspects here that I would like to mention. First of all of the procedures that are relevant for the information topics, you will also find information on these procedures. So what does this mean? You will find an explanation on everything that is relevant to complete this procedure. So all of the steps, how much time does it take, what is the evidence that I will need to provide, in which language can I complete this procedure, how can I appeal, who can support me if I struggle with this procedure. All of this information, again, is accessible via the Your Europe portal. In addition to that, the regulation includes a list of 21 procedure types that have been considered at the time of the adoption of key importance for cross-border users. And for these procedures, they have to be made available fully online since December 2023. So this means that every step of the procedure, including identification, sending documents, signing requests, all of these time-consuming steps, these can all be made online. The digitalization of procedures also concerns four other significant EU directives, such as the Services Directive, the Professional Qualifications Directive, and two Public Procurement Directive. So for this procedure, it is only in exceptional circumstances that a member state can oblige a user to actually appear in person to complete the procedure. What this means in practice is that you will no longer need to queue at some register, and you will no longer need to deal with physical paperwork. The overall aim being to save you time and indeed money. The regulation also foresees a system, an IT system that my colleague Thomas will present to you in more detail, which supports the implementation of these digital procedures. What does it do? It allows the automated and secure exchange of all of the evidence needed to complete these procedures. But this is only a teaser, and I will let Thomas go into all of the details of that system. The third pillar of the SDG concerns assistance services. Users here can contact all of these services when they come across a problem during their search for information, or if they struggle with a procedure. Again, all of the assistance services that are provided for in the gateway are subject to important quality requirements, just to ensure that you actually get what you need. What does it mean is that these services must provide precise information, they must include information about the time frame in which you will get support. All of this is foreseen in the regulation. So here you can find on the slide the list of the assistance services that you can access via the Your Europe portal. So you will have understood what does the single digital gateway aim for is to radically improve the European business environment and to help citizens exercise their fundamental rights. How? By cutting red tape, saving you time, and helping, most importantly, users, businesses, citizens, to understand their rights and indeed leverage all of the opportunities of the single market. Because it is only if you understand your rights and you can easily exercise your rights that you will fully benefit from the single market. So the single digital gateway, we are proud to say, has had a promising start. In 2023, the Your Europe portal was the most visited Commission website with over 30 million visits overall. And when we take into account all of the linked national pages that provide information, we count over 100 million visits. So the website is used, but we need users to really make this a reflex to automatically go to Your Europe for whatever information they need, especially as the scope of the single digital gateway is only growing because it has been conceived as a horizontal instrument, meaning that we are constantly updating the list of topics and of procedures that need to comply with the requirements. To give you additional numbers, recent statistics have shown that on the business pages, only on the business pages of Your Europe, users have spent over 120,000 hours. If you convert this in legal cost, even by a conservative estimate, this represents savings of over 2.5 million euros. And this is only the start of it. So I'm going to stop here, and I will be standing here for any questions you may have. I also invite you to take a little sticker, to add it on your phone, on your computer, on your notepad, which holds the QR code to the Your Europe website, and to please always consider visiting the webpage for any information you may need. Here you go, Thomas.
Thanks a lot, Charlotte. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through the once-only technical system. So this is one of the elements that Charlotte just presented, and what I think it really is, because we're going to cover a technical system from an EU regulation that could be seen as quite dry. But what we're really talking about here is how the European Commission and EU member states are committed to making the single market as accessible to everyone as possible. So if we keep that in our mind, I think it's a very worthy goal that will generate lots of benefits. So I think, as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm originally from the UK, and I've therefore dealt with a fair few Eurosceptic arguments, basically saying that the EU is quite bureaucratic. But I think this is a massive misconception, because in the single market, we have one market and therefore one rule book for companies and citizens who want to be active in certain ways. It actually reduces the level of administration that would be the case if you didn't have a single market with a single rulebook. But there is still paperwork or digital paperwork, and this might come from EU regulations, this might come from national regulations. If you want to move to another country to study, to set up a business, whatever, you're going to face some paperwork. And what we really want to do is reduce this, right? So imagine you're basically, as a citizen or business, responsible for searching for the relevant data to complete cross-border procedures, to download these documents, to re-upload them, be sure which is an equivalent document. Is it the right document for the right procedure? You have to be the judge of this, and if you get it wrong, that could have a fiscal, you've put time and potentially money into this. And then you also have linguistic diversity. A great beauty of Europe is our linguistic diversity, but it can be a challenge when you want to know what documents are authentic. On the other side, I think it's important to see the other side, is public authorities at the other end of these procedures, and I will give you the examples of the procedures, don't worry. They have to be sure that someone setting up an accountancy practice or a dentistry practice in another country is actually qualified and allowed to set up that business. It's incredibly important. And this is a pressure on public authorities that they have to verify people from other EU countries. How would you make sure that's been done correctly? You need to be sure that the data and the evidence you're receiving is indeed correct. And we have a new threat, if it wasn't complex enough, with generative AI. I mean, there are stands here discussing this in way more detail. Basically, how do you know that a document submitted to you is indeed legitimate and is indeed reflecting reality? This is just a fun example I found of documents that you can get access to via online generative neural networks, and it's a big challenge. So we have on one side citizens and businesses, they want to move to EU countries, and on the other side we've got public administrations. Do they know that the documents they're receiving are indeed genuine? It's a challenge for them. And this comes down to a really key point, that our economy and our society are built on authentic data, that you can trust the data that you're dealing with, that someone has the certification or has the right to be doing what they want to do, and that it's issued by trusted authorities. And this is really a massive point for our society, our economy, and it'll define how well we can digitalize the single market going forward. So trusted, authentic data is what we need. So mandated by the Single Digital Gateway regulation that Charlotte just went through, the once-only technical system is a technical system that basically allows authorities to easily access the secure and trusted data across borders. It is a platform that enables government or bodies in one country to request the authentic data from the relevant authority in another country, and thus removing the need for the citizen or the business to provide this over and over again. Now, obviously, I know you'll have questions about data protection, privacy, security, and we'll cover those in a bit more detail. And I think one thing that's really important to know, and Charlotte already mentioned it, is what's the scope of this system, right? Are your diplomas going to be flying around the internet everywhere? Absolutely not. The once-only technical system, or the OOTS, or the OOTS, I have heard it said, I don't mind, whatever you want, is relevant for 21 procedures. That's 21 specific cross-border procedures that EU member states have identified as in need of digitalization and some level of automation to help people more easily move around and move between EU countries and enjoy the benefits of the single market. I cannot read that, to be fair. But these are the specific 21 procedures, and as you'll see, they relate to to life events in the areas of birth, moving abroad, retiring, working, and you can see that some of them have been selected as the first procedures that will use the once-only technical system. So applying for study financing in a third country, registering a motor vehicle in another country. Under starting and running and closing a business, we have number 60, notification of a business activity. That sounds quite innocuous, but that's actually huge. That's all the paperwork you need to do, or all the cross-border admin you need to do to register a new business, to prove that you can be doing that business, to maintain it, and to close it. So I think the really important thing to here is to understand is when we're talking about once only, that is the exchange of data and documents, we are talking about a specific scope. This can be increased, and Charlotte already said, but I think that's just something that's really important to be clear on. And as said, I think the key word for us is mobility, right? We're talking about increased mobility in the EU single market. So what does it mean? On one hand, it means you're reducing the amount of time and effort that a company or an individual has to put in to finding the right document, to uploading it, to downloading it, sorry, re-uploading it in the right portal. So you're saving people time and money. Again, what Charlotte explained in some detail is it's also a timely opportunity to digitalize key procedures and therefore streamline them. So the once-only technical system is an opportunity for us all to reflect on how are these procedures put together, how do they look, and how can we make them even more efficient. And another benefit is that you're moving, ideally, from sort of classical documents that we would recognize in the form of PDFs, you know, in sort of birth certificates and stuff, toward structured data sets that can be automatically translated. So certain diplomas or permits that you've received. And this obviously really helps the administrations concerned be aware what the claims are of a citizen or business in terms of what they want to do. So if you want to set up a business in a country, are you qualified to do that? It helps people be sure, it increases the level of certainty and security that we have in the single market. So this was a very kind of slapdash attempt to render what does it look like when you're doing a cross-border procedure. So we have the lovely nice round number of 10, which has also looked nice on the slide, but basically you need to find the procedure in a country. And again, Your Europe is really the platform that the Commission is putting forward to the member states to help people find these procedures, because we all, I'm sure, have experience of doing it before these kind of websites where you don't even know where to start. There's no sort of massive time saving there from you once only. You still have to find the procedure. But then you have to figure out which evidence you need to provide. What is going to be asked of you? What is the equivalent? So if it's a diploma, how do you know it's the equivalent diploma, or a certification, even a better example? Who is the provider of the evidence you need? You need to authenticate yourself to that provider to get the authentic data, so a certification. You need to download this evidence. You need to go back to the procedure portal in question. You need to authenticate to that portal. You have to upload the evidence, and you finalize the procedure. It's a lot of work, and depending on what the procedure is, it can really be a costly and time-consuming business and can put people off or even block people from being mobile in the single market. This, with a nice round figure of 6, is the basically an idea of the user journey with the once-only technical system. So you still have to find the procedure, but again, we have Your Europe, which really facilitates this because you have all this information on one side. You authenticate. You request the evidence exchange. I put the exclamation mark there because this is a really important point. For the once-only technical system to exchange the data, you have to request actively that this is done. It is not done automatically. It's not something you opt out of. It's something you have to choose. You have to select, and the member states right now are developing prototypes on how will this look, how exactly will the buttons appear on the website. But you have to say, I want this to be done. I want my data to be exchanged between the competent authorities. I think it's a really, really important point as concerns data protection and security. You then authenticate on the provider side. That means in the same web page, you're doing all your authentication. You're not authenticating yourself using your electronic ID to authenticate yourself on different web pages of different sites. So again, it's making the overall experience of doing cross-border administration easier. Then you preview and confirm. And this is another really important point that in the regulation, or the implementing regulation that stems from the SDG, from the regulation that sets out how the once-only technical system must be built, a user must be able to preview the kind of data that will be exchanged. If the data is not available, then you have an error message and the system can't be used. You have to see what data is it going to exchange. You're not sat there wondering, well, what on earth has been sent from a population register in Spain to a vehicle registration authority in Poland. You see what kind of data it is. And this is, again, another really important element of the system. And then you finalize the procedure. In addition to that, and not to get too technical, we have the common services, right? This is basically part of the IT infrastructure of the system. But what this means is that the once-only technical system has a catalog of all the organizations, basically the public authorities, that exchange data to the once-only technical system and the kinds of data they have. It's not the actual data of individuals, it's the kind of data that can be exchanged. So this is how also a user can be sure that the relevant data and the relevant organizations are covered by the once-only technical system. So I think that's also a point worth keeping in mind, and it's to really reinforce that people can have trust in the service. Don't panic. I'm not going to go through the architecture of the system, but I just thought it might be handy in case we have questions on it in the Q&A. But this is the sort of architecture of the system. I actually can't see how I'm doing for time, so I'm just going to keep talking until someone shuts me up. But I have two or three more slides. Another really interesting point here is what the once-only technical system is its infrastructure, right? That means it can also be used for more things, or in the context of more things. So one example here is cross-border authentication. Now, that's a whole different presentation, but through EIDAS, basically, which is itself a regulation, EU citizens can authenticate themselves using their electronic ID in another EU country. So basically, I have an electronic Belgian identity, and I can use that to authenticate myself to systems in Germany. The once-only technical system reuses this architecture, right? So it's built strategically aligned with other major cross-border architecture. New and other cross-border digital programs or projects, so the example here, the EU Digital Identity Wallet, can use the same secure message exchange channels as the once-only technical system to speed their rollout. So you can also facilitate other programs that are going forward. And I think it's also worth keeping in mind that we've talked about 21 procedures, or those that have been identified as needing the once-only technical system to help exchange data, because you have to start somewhere, but we can go beyond that. And again, this is something I think Charlotte mentioned in her presentation. And what we're really wanting to do is eliminate barriers to mobility. So we want to have the automatic mapping of evidence types between different EU countries. We want to have a catalogue of the evidence providers that are catalogued through the common services that mean you can see which organizations are exchanging data through the once-only technical system and what data they're exchanging. And it helps connect public authorities with organizations that provide data from the original source. So, in summary, very quickly, it cuts down the amount of work you have to do that you can request for the automatic exchange of the data. There's more trust, because rather than you being dependent on having the most up-to-date version of a certificate, it is already being sent from the organization that has it, so the registry or the university, to the organization that needs it. So it's more trust, and again, in an age of AI, I think this can't be undervalued. Linked to that, you're receiving always the latest version of the evidence. I have personal life experience where I've had a document I needed to send, but even though the document is like very old, the organization in question needs a version that's more up to date. And you can circumvent problems like this through having data going straight from one body to another. I mentioned standardized versus non-standardized data, so we can also allow for the automatic translation of certain documents and information, which is a big help if you want to get people moving around the European single market with 24 official languages plus regional languages. And it also creates a government-to-government data space. And basically this links with the European strategy of getting the most amount of value we can out of the data that we generate. So we are really leveraging on the exchange of data to increase mobility. And again, Charlotte gave ideas of how much savings we can make, plus how much more our economy grows when people can move around and do businesses and live in other countries that they want to. Okay, so I tried to make that as less boring as possible. If you want to have a chat with me or Charlotte, indeed, feel free.
I'm going to say another word. I'm going to say another word.
Oh yeah, please.
Yeah. Just to close the loop between these two presentations, I'm just going to give you a very simple example of how this all fits together. So imagine I am Danish, I live currently in Belgium, and I want to apply for admission to a university in Italy. How do I go about this? Just figuring out the information would in itself maybe block certain people for even imagining doing this. So I go on your Europe It's a very user-friendly website. I am a citizen, I come from this country, I'm looking for information on university, on studying. Okay, I want to study in Italy. Then it will produce web pages. These are only web pages that are notified by member states. So it's not it's not Google. It's going to only produce results from reliable sources. So then I find the web page of the university. Thank God it's in English. Great. Then I look for all the information. I have a link to access the procedure. Great. Don't even have to think about this. I click. Okay, what are the documents I will need to produce to apply for admission? I will need, I'm saying this on top of my head, I may need my birth certificate,
Yeah, for sure.
I may need proof of my current residence, and I may need my bachelor's degree to apply for a master's degree. Oh, how am I going to get these documents? I'm going to have to go to the municipality, I may need to go to the Danish embassy. This is already causing me a headache. Oh no, I can actually request a system that's going to propose to exchange these evidences. Okay, I can even preview them. Yes, this is me, indeed. This is my birth certificate, this is my current address, and this is my diploma. Perfect. Click, it is sent. Sent to the university. On that basis, I finalize the procedure. I get confirmation that the procedure is complete. And I'm done. And I haven't even left my seat. So this is maybe a straightforward example, but imagine taking this for all of the procedure you have seen and we have mentioned in this presentation, and imagine all of those that are yet to come. The time that is saved, and hopefully, because this is really the objective, hopefully all of the opportunities that are offered by this, because it is all about mobility, it is all
Absolutely.
about leveraging what other member states and what our diverse culture can do. I think we've...
C'est parfait. So now you've heard us talk. Are there any questions or comments, ideas? We'd love to hear from you. Thanks, guys. And for anyone brave enough to come talk to us afterwards, we have really nice branded notebooks, which I love. And if people don't take them, I have to carry them on the train to Brussels. So feel free to come and get a notebook. Are there any questions? Yeah,
Yes.
we have one over here. Do we have a... Yes, we do. Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I don't know if this goes beyond the scope, maybe, but I was wondering for the case of citizens from outside the European Union, like all the skilled workers that are coming to Germany at the moment. In my specific case, for example, I come from Ecuador. I've been living here for a few years now, and I would like to go and live abroad. Does that apply to me? I have a master's degree from Germany already. Would that be accessible to me as well, the platform? That would be the first question. And the second one would be the taxes. How does it work when I have a company and I have it here, but then I also have activities in another country within the European Union? Is there something that covered the topic of taxes here as well?
So if I can just say on the first
Sure.
question. So thank you very much for the questions. So one, the first, I mean, in terms of authenticating yourself and being able to use the public services, indeed, it's about residency in the EU ultimately. So if you're registered, then you're beginning to have the capacity to use the services as you do as someone living as a registered person in the European Union. In terms of the organizations that can exchange the data. Right now, we're working with member states to connect the authorities, as we call them, competent authorities, so the organizations that possess the original data, the organizations that are that will receive it. So right now, this is focused really on competent authorities within the European Union. So that's the scope. So unless I'm mistaken, if that body is outside the EU now, it would be out of scope. But your ability to use if you've been active in different EU countries to access the system as someone living in the EU, then this would, of course, be possible. Is there something you want to add?
I don't think I have much to add, but just for some of the examples you mentioned, such as working in another EU country, finding information on skilled worker, this is typically information you will be able to access on your Europe in English, regardless of the member state you're interested in. You mentioned taxes. This is indeed listed in the areas of information for businesses. So there again, you will be able to find information. And of course, there is a feedback tool, so if the information for some reason wasn't satisfactory, we do invite users to provide feedback because this is how we can improve.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes, please. Yeah, sorry, you need this.
I heard the comment this week that from a tax credit and incentive perspective, especially in the energy sector, people are concerned that the Green New Deal is too complex, it's too hard to actually go through the application process versus the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, and that there's fear around the bureaucracy side of it. Do you foresee that the system would be used for managing processes like that to streamline business efforts to get access to those sort of programs?
So I can maybe talk to that. You may have heard about the Net Zero Industry Act that was proposed by the European Commission, currently being discussed by the co-legislators. Here, indeed, we have proposed that information on the Net Zero Industry Act and the permit procedures that are foreseen by this regulation are included in the scope, meaning that information on the rules that will apply and the rights will be accessible on your Europe with the links to the procedures, which can then all be completed fully online. So this is an example of us trying to expand the scope. It's now being discussed. Hopefully, we will get there, and yes, it will be then included.
Okay. Any more? I actually don't know what time it is, so we could have half an hour of questions. We could have 30 seconds for questions, so just fire away. If not, we're also here to have one-on-one discussions as well.
Yeah, we're staying around, so don't hesitate.
Okay. Thank you all very much for your time, and safe trip back to wherever you're going.